Well, with the outbreak of COVID-19, the word pandemic has actually become a household name. Pan meaning all and demos meaning people or population. So a pandemic is something that affects all kinds of people, irrespective of race, language, or color. But today I want to talk about another kind of a pandemic that affects all of us. Again, it affects each one of us, irrespective of race, language, color, ethnicity, or even nationality. It is William Glaser, the author of Reality Therapy, who said, all psychological problems, from the slightest neurosis to the deepest psychosis, all of them originate due to lack of self-esteem or a sense of personal worth. Now, who of us, deep inside our hearts, don't desire to be recognized and be accepted and be loved and be appreciated? But when these needs of recognition and acceptance and the sense of belonging or being wanted are not given to us or are not met, it gives way to widespread issues such as psychosomatic illnesses, to neuroticism, to hatredness, to alcoholism, to drug abuse, to violence, and to all kinds of social disorders. Well, then the question that arises is, what really causes poor self-esteem, or what really causes the lack of self-worth? First, one of the basic reasons for the lack of self-esteem is because at least 90% of our self-esteem comes from what others think of us. Let me say that again. 90% of our self-esteem comes from what others think of us. From the choice of our food to the choice of our dress, and in fact, many of our choices actually, to a large degree, depend upon how people would validate it. It is Solomon Asch, one of the founders of modern psychology, who carried out this very interesting study. He drew a standard line of about 10 centimeters on the board and drew 3 other lines of 3 centimeters, 5 centimeters, and 10 centimeters respectively. He then asked the class as to which of these lines from the 3 matched the size of the standard 10 centimeter. Well, it was decided beforehand that some of Solomon's own assistants would be present in the class and they would answer the question as Solomon would have instructed them, and they all shouted 5 centimeters. When the rest of the class was asked, surprisingly, Solomon found out that all of them together said the answer is 5 centimeter. Now, of course, this is a study that proves the power of conformity, but it also subtly suggests to us that our self-esteem comes from what others think of us, to the extent that our behavior, our choices are determined by what others think of us. But here is the problem. People are not always kind. They're not always generous. Now, you may ask me why. The reason is because people are people. The second reason for the lack of self-esteem is the tendency to confuse failure in a project with failure in life, failure in an event with failure in life itself. Now, let me give you an example here. Failure in board exam is often equated with failure in life. Failure in a relationship is often equated to failure in life. Failure in business is often equated to failure in life. Hence, you read of people committing suicide because you realize one has failed in board exams, so one has failed in a relationship, or one has failed in a business. Of course, one can fail at anything at any given point of time. But you see, failure at something should not be equated with failure in life. They are 2 different categories altogether. In fact, we must learn to fall forward, as John Maxwell would say, so that we may learn from our failures and use our failures as stepping stones to success. But isn't it unfortunate that we and I end up confusing failure in a project, in an event, with failure in life itself? Well, third reason for the lack of self-esteem is because of unrealistic and unfair comparison. Unrealistic and unfair comparison. Someone said poor image is because of comparing your worst future to someone else's best future. Comparing your worst future with someone else's best features. It is James Dobson in his book Life on the Edge says, comparison is the root of all inferiority. Comparison is the root of all inferiority. Now, if I'm going to compare myself with any one of you listening to me right now, there is no doubt that at some point of our conversation, I'm going to feel inferior. And that's because I'm not good at everything. Hence, you might be good at something that I might not be good at all. And because I end up comparing my worst feature with your best, I am going to feel completely doomed for that matter. Well, the fourth reason for the lack of self-esteem is due to carrying our past life into our present life. Carrying our past life into our present life. Our past lives not only make us feel guilty, I think our past life also to a large extent make us feel very shameful. In fact, all of us have got past to us, don't we? It is again William Glaser who says, whatever has happened in the past has happened and we have no control over it. So how do I ensure that I have a good self-esteem? Now, I as a follower of the Lord Jesus Christ, I know this, that I don't have to live my life to please people around me. I don't have to live my life to please people around me. Oftentimes we wonder, log kya kahenge? I don't have to live that mode at all. Instead, I live to please God. In fact, the Bible reminds me that I am made in the image of God. I'm secure in my identity that comes from God. My validation of myself does not come from people. It comes from the one who has made me. Second, I know that I'm a broken and marred vessel. I'm not perfect in any sense. I don't have to wear masks and pretend to look good on the outside. But in my brokenness and in my failures, the Lord still accepts me just as I am. For I know this, that even when the world gives up on me, my Lord Jesus would never give up on me. Third, I refuse to compare myself with anyone. That is travesty, isn't it? For I'm unique in my making. In fact, you are unique in your making. Out of the 7+ billion people who have walked on this planet Earth, there is none like you, my friend. There is none like me. We are one of a kind, and so are you. Fourth, yes, I have a past. But through Jesus and his death, he has forgiven my past and has given me a hope for tomorrow. And through him, I'm not ashamed of who I am, and I will be in the future, for I'm covered by his righteousness. So my dear friends, don't live by what others say about you. Don't let failures define you. Do not take the bait of comparison. Don't let the past haunt you and bog you down. Here is a story that I came across. The story is told of a violinist who was a well-renowned performer. And she had now gathered a group of people who had come to admire the way she would play the violin. Every strings would just emit in the beauty of the way she would play it. After she had finished performing, she retreated back onto the stage behind the curtains, and people stood up and gave her the most thunderous applause they could have ever given. And the people at the backstage nudged this lady and said, why don't you go ahead and go to the stage and take the bow and accept the applause? And she would just not budge. She would say, I'm not going. They didn't understand her hesitation till she parted the curtain by the corner and pointed the finger to a man who was sitting right in the front of the auditorium, who was still seated while the audience were all on their foot clapping. And she said, that's my teacher. He's my teacher. He's still sitting down. For her, the applause of the teacher mattered the most than the applause of the audience. So can I say this? Live the life that has been given to you, and live it not for the approval of the people around you, but for the approval of the one who has made you. For his approval, your master's approval, is the most important thing in life. And may your self-esteem not come from those events and circumstances and people around you, but let it come from the one who has formed you and has created you. Well, thank you so much for giving me your listening, and may the Lord bless you. Thank you.